In Colorado, the frigid days of winter gave way to the only mildly warmer days of spring somewhere around May. On this particularly sunny Saturday in May, Gwen was rushing through rounds so she could try and beat Milo to her apartment. They had met each other either in Denver or Palmer Ridge, pretty consistently every weekend since Valentine's Day. She knew he wasn't comfortable in Denver. He'd made no secret of the fact that he hated the city. But the fact that he kept coming just to see her made her feel warm inside. The text she'd gotten from Sarah this morning had put a huge smile on her face, one she was sure that all of her patients noticed. Sarah saw Milo getting ready to head down today. He sure has been looking cheerful lately. Wink. Gwen, I'm excited to see him. I know he hates coming down here, but I sure love having him close. Also, you know there's an emoticon keyboard, right? You don't actually have to write out, wink. Sarah, he doesn't hate it. But even if he did, he loves you enough to make that worth it. And you know that I am not technically adept. Be thankful you even get a damn text now and then. Love. Her heart did a little somersault. Somewhere in the craziness of life, her running up the mountain and him running down, love had blossomed. Gwen had clothes at his house, and there was a drawer reserved for him in hers. They had gotten to know each other's quirks. Just seeing his name on her phone made her quiver a little. She was a little concerned that he hadn't actually said it yet, but she was trying to give him time and space on the whole trust piece. She could only hope that he would realize that she wasn't Macy, and that she wouldn't betray or leave him. Milo, just got to your place. What time will you be home? Gwen, about to see my last patient. I should be home in an hour. Need anything on my way? Milo, no, I was just thinking we could go out to lunch. How about meeting at 16th Street Mall? Clock Tower. Gwen, sounds great, I'll finish up here as quickly as I can. Love you. Milo, great, see you soon, beautiful. It wasn't an undying declaration of love, but it sure was nice. Now she needed to decide if it was really enough for her. Head down, she was powering down the hallway to get to the locker room when she nearly plowed headfirst into Dr. Sindhu. He caught her by the shoulders, slowing her hurried pace. Whoa, where's the fire? Oh my gosh, Neil, I am so sorry. I didn't see you there. Well, yes, you were moving like a homicidal squirrel trying to get to its last nut store in the dead of winter. Where are you going in such a hurry? I'm heading to the locker room. No, I mean you're clearly in a rush to get somewhere. His eyebrows shot up as he smirked at her. Milo just got into the city, and we're meeting for lunch. You know how I hate to be late for anything. Even she didn't believe that last part. Uh-huh. Well, gotta go. I'll walk with you, Gwen. Dr. Vishnu was practically jogging to keep up with her pace. He trailed her into the locker room and watched as she punched in her locker combination code. It sure is nice to see you so happy about seeing Milo. It's nice to see you happy, period. Well, I am happy with him. So, am I going to have the conversation with him where I ask him what his intentions are? You've been together for a while, and I take my duties as substitute dad for you very seriously. The thought made her laugh out loud. We haven't been together that long. It's only been 6 months. Wow, it's been 6 months. Gwen sank down onto the bench in the middle of the lockers. She had no idea it had been that long. They had fallen into such an easy routine. She had not been looking to the future that was years away, but now, all of a sudden, it didn't feel that distant. Now she was starting to wonder what his intentions were. Well, you let me know if I need to step in here. Dr. Vishnu was still playing with her. She realized how lucky she was to have him around and stood up and gave him a spontaneous hug. Thanks, Neil. I'm very happy to have such an amazing substitute dad. Dr. Vishnu blushed with pride. Releasing her, he patted her on the shoulder awkwardly. Always my pleasure, Gwen. Hey, there she is. Hi, beautiful. Milo's voice was low and smooth. He loved how she smiled when she saw him. He loved how the corners of her eyes crinkled as the sides of her mouth went up. When Gwen smiled, it was genuine. I hope you haven't been waiting long. No, I was early. How was your day? He did love the way they had become so familiar over the last 6 months. Oh, mostly standard stuff. Alicia's surgery is scheduled for Monday, and her parents are nervous. She's doing fantastic, though. Leave it to a 5-year-old to handle it better than the adults. I've heard they usually do. They ordered, and Milo felt her hesitation. What's up, big city? Nothing, really. Well, almost nothing. Out with it. Well, Neil basically reminded me that we'd been seeing each other for 6 months now. And he also asked where things were going for us. I don't think about that a lot, but I couldn't really answer him. And that worried me a bit. What about that worried you? I'm a planner, Milo. You know that. These last 6 months have been amazing, and I'd love for us to be together for a long time to come. But something about it still feels so temporary. I'm not sure, I just know that his question and my lack of answer has me feeling unsettled. Milo thought for a moment. He was so used to responding on the spot, since he usually knew all the answers. But with emotions he was at a loss. Gwen, I thought things were going pretty well. I really like spending time with you. You're the most amazing woman I've ever known. I'd love for it to be like this for a long time, but it sounds like temporary bothers you. Well, yes. At some point I was hoping we'd get to something more permanent. I was hoping we could start talking about more permanent plans. I don't want everything to be great today, and then have you suddenly change your mind tomorrow. I deserve more than that. So, you're saying what we have isn't enough? I don't honestly know. I guess that's the problem. Gwen, I believe I have been honest with you. I told you my past, and how it's made me who I am today. I care about you a great deal, but I can't give you the permanence you're looking for. That's not who I am anymore. You act like you have no say at all in what you do and who you become. People can change, you know. He had to admit, she had him there. The thought of actually letting her in, letting her see his weaknesses and his fears, he shuddered involuntarily. That was an uncertainty that, for him, was bigger than all the universe. I am who it makes sense for me to be. Besides that, we live 80 miles away from each other. There is no way to make that kind of a commute work. Would you be happy moving up to Palmer Ridge? Milo was baiting her, waiting to see what she would say. Why is that the only option? You mostly write academic papers. You could do that from Denver, if you wanted to. It would be nearly impossible for me to continue my career from Palmer Ridge. And even if I were willing to move, why would I do that for someone who could decide that he's tired of our relationship tomorrow and move on? That struck just the right nerve within him. You honestly think I would do that? Is that really the kind of man that you think I am? Hurt blazed in those soft brown eyes. Give me one shred of proof that you're as committed as I am, just one. That's all I'm looking for. His head snapped back and his jaw sagged. Milo struggled to think. He hated that she had the ability to take away his reason, his logic. That was the only thing that he felt strong in. I've come down here almost every weekend this winter. And then we alternated. I'm not expecting you to carry the entire load. Milo, you know what I mean. You don't open up to me. You don't tell me when things are bothering you. You've never suggested anything more than just casually spending time with each other. Don't get me wrong, the sex is amazing, but I need more than that. The couple at the table next to them didn't even try to hide the glance they each shot in the direction of Gwen and Milo's table. So, what do you want, Gwen? I just want to feel like you love me as much as I love you. Do you? Milo stiffened and tried to gather some sense of reason out of the storm of emotion going on inside him. They had never used the word love before, but somehow he knew instinctively, as she did, that's exactly what this was. He struggled to find words to tell her that he loved her back. But he didn't get the chance to reply before Gwen's phone started to ring. Dr. Taylor. When? What reading are we looking at? Okay, I'm on my way back, I'll be there in 10 minutes. She put her phone back in her purse and wiped a single stray tear off her cheek. I have to go back to work. Alicia's oxygen bottomed out. We may have to do the valve replacement now. She looked longingly at the salad the waiter had just put in front of her. I'll get the food boxed up. Go ahead back and call me when you get a break, I'll bring your lunch, or dinner, or whatever. Milo was genuinely sad she was leaving. We'll talk tonight. Exactly where we left off. Milo stood to hug her. As he put his hands on her back, he realized he was shaking. Gwen, on the other hand, was solid as a rock. The love of his life clearly had nerves of steel. As he sat down, he motioned for the waiter to get Gwen's food boxed up and ordered a beer for himself. He was going to need a lot more than iced tea to get through the jumble of thoughts he had running through his head and the million pinpricks of emotion that were happening. Maybe beer wasn't even strong enough to help him decide where the hell his path should lead, and what the first step should be. Gwen, we should be done by 9 p.m. She's hanging in there. Milo, what about you? You've been in surgery for 6 hours. Gwen, I guess that's what makes me the doctor. Milo, well, that makes you amazing to me. I'll head down there at 9. Gwen, that would be nice, thank you. Milo packed up the dinner he had made and brought it to the hospital at 9 p.m. sharp. Although he was not looking forward to the conversation they were going to continue, he was looking forward to seeing Gwen, to physically touching her. He was always surprised that he was acutely aware of her absence. She'd asked him if he loved her. Milo knew in his heart that he loved her more than any other human being, ever. He knew that she was the only one he'd ever love again, but he didn't know if that was enough to help him lower the walls he'd built around his heart. He also knew that Gwen was not Macy. He didn't believe she would ever purposefully hurt him, but then he hadn't believed that with Macy either. He knew he was throwing in their physical location as a distraction in the conversation. The distance wasn't really that great, but it was just another thing that supported the idea that this really wasn't meant to be. But most of all, Milo knew he was damaged goods. He knew that he couldn't love Gwen the way she deserved, and that he would never be the man she needed him to be. He had buried that part of himself away so long ago that he knew it was lost for good. That's why he'd never told her he loved her. It would be unfair to her. It would make her feel obligated to stay. If he didn't make any effort at commitment to her, sooner or later she would move on to someone who could. Maybe that day was today. Letting her go was the kindest thing he could do, rather than let her wait around forever for him to be ready to trust. He made his way to the surgical waiting room and sat in the corner. Right on time, Gwen and one of her surgical residents emerged from the surgery suite. Gwen scanned the waiting room and saw Milo. The corners of her mouth turned up wearily. She headed towards Alicia's parents with purpose. Mr. and Mrs. Bettner. Her parents jumped to their feet, anxiously looking at Gwen, knowing with certainty that their lives literally depended on the next words that came out of her mouth. Alicia made it through the surgery just fine. I know it was a long one, but we got the valve replaced, and her oxygen levels are back to where we need them to be. She'll be asleep for a while longer, but you can sit with her in the recovery room. Mrs. Bettner let out a gasp of air, a breath she had been holding all night. She grabbed Gwen by the wrists. Thank you. Thank you with all my heart. Thank you for saving our little girl. There aren't enough words. She stopped talking as the sobs that she'd held in all night escaped her throat, a sign of pure relief. Mr. Bettner was clearly overwhelmed. He managed to croak out, "Thank you," before he gathered his wife in his arm, gently patting her back. Milo stood, transfixed on the scene in front of him. His girlfriend, the love of his life, had just saved the life of a child, and in doing so had saved the lives of her whole family. Her work was so important, so noble. This was clearly what she had been put on this earth to do. He felt his heart start to break. He knew what he had to do. Gwen walked over to him. She wrapped her arms around his neck, and he could feel her lean into the hug she gave him. Milo was always happy to be pressed up against her, but he had a feeling that it was partly her way of staving off the exhaustion that was no doubt overwhelming her. "What's for dinner?" "I made manicotti. Are you hungry?" "Honestly, I'm so far beyond hungry that I don't think I can eat right now. I would really love to shower, though. Let's go home, okay? We can talk tomorrow. Tonight, I just want to snuggle up with you and get some sleep."